Well, playoff season is almost here. We are finally into the final week of the regular season in the BC Junior A Lacrosse League, but that means we have a week to recap before we get to this final week. And my oh my, was there ever plenty of action, as there always was. And we're post-trade deadline as well, so we got some stuff to recap after a quick week off on the breakdown. So let's get right into that. The first game on our list that we got to talk about here was Coquitlam facing off against the Delta Islanders on the road in the Ladner Leisure Center. And before we get to the actual game itself, again, this is the first game since the trade deadline, and there were a lot of acquisitions for the Coquitlam AdNax, also some departures for the Delta Islanders. We'll get to those in just a moment, but let's start with some of these acquisitions for the AdNax. Remember, they are a contender looking to go back to the Minto Cup, and you're getting a look at it right there. We talked on the Trade Center style episode about how right-handed offense is what they're looking for. Safe to say that they got it. Brendan Campbell comes over from the Burlington Blaze of the Ontario Junior A Lacrosse League, and then from that point forward, it's New Westminster Salmon Bellies galore. Ren Glanville, Aiden McDonald, and Kyler Francis as the lone lefty. And Kyler Francis is a guy that I want to stay on for just a moment because some of you may remember a video or a clip that you may have seen from back in 2019, and we can throw to that clip right now. This is a young Kyler Francis playing in the junior NLL tournament. I knew that I recognized that name somewhere. As soon as I started doing some prep, this video popped up. What a move against the former Vancouver lacrosse team in the stealth. And guess what? He did it another time in the tournament as well. The little toe drag, and then, man, shades of Chase Fraser, and he's doing it against those junior bandits as well. Not too shabby for Kyler Francis. He comes over as the lone lefty on the offensive side for the Coquitlam AdNax. Now we can go and take a look over at some of the departures for the Delta Islanders. They decided, rather than standing pat like I thought they were going to do at the deadline, they decided to sell a couple of those pieces off. Turner Anderson and Jared Masnick, couple of right-handed offensive pieces, go over to the Nanaimo Timberman. That's a team that we've talked about them wanting to load up. And yeah, some more trades went down involving the Nanaimo Timberman that we can break down here shortly once we get to their games from last week. But a couple more studs going over to the offensive side of the ball for the Timberman away from the Delta Islanders. Now let's get into this game between Coquitlam and Delta. It went down, as mentioned, in the Ladner Leisure Center. And remember, this is the first game, A, for Coquitlam since the trade deadline, but B, this is their first game against Delta in Delta since that dramatic, I believe, 14-4 loss, I think it was, which eventually led into them getting a little bit of redemption against Delta on their home floor. But this is the first time they play against that team back in that building when they had that insanely uncharacteristic loss. And it just sort of was another opportunity for them to exercise some of those demons, really put their stamp on this season even more. It did look a little bit shaky in the early stages, and the Delta Islanders went up 3-0 early. Jack Cass got the starting goal once again for Coquitlam. This was the different thing, though, about this game was that Coquitlam was able to answer back and find some more success with that. I think the thing that we saw in the last game against the Islanders on the road was Delta would score, and Coquitlam just had a hard time finding a way to answer back and find that continued success. That was obviously different in this game. They did take the lead for the first time late in that first period. They did not trail for the remainder of that game. So you know that there was an extra emphasis on this for them in that game, and they made no mistake from that point forward. They were in the driver's seat for mostly the rest of that game. It did get a little bit shaky at some points with Delta pushing back, but really Coquitlam they were in a pretty good position the entire way through. I don't really think the result of this game has much of an effect on the Delta Islanders all that much. I've said this throughout the season, like Delta, I've called them my dark horse team. Whether or not they're still in the mix sort of for that fourth and final playoff spot. Whether or not they get in, I mean, that's up for discussion. We are in the final week of the season, remember, but they've proven a lot this season. They've proven a lot of people wrong. I think that this is more so them looking forward to the future, something that they've built on this year. So with that in mind, I really don't think that the result of this game is something that they're overly concerned about, especially putting up an effort like this at home against Coquitlam, where yes, they lose the game, but they do keep themselves in it the entire way through, and they're doing it without Jared Masnick, is something pretty impressive for this Islanders team. So Coquitlam does end up taking this on the road to get a little bit of revenge against that Delta Islanders team. We can take a look over at the Islanders' next coming games in the final week of the regular season here. It was a light week last week for the Islanders. Next up on their schedule, though, they have 2 final games to close out the regular season. They'll get underway Wednesday, tomorrow at the time of recording. They'll be on the road against the Burnaby Lakers in Burnaby's final home game of the regular season, and then they will wrap up their season at home on Saturday afternoon against the Nanaimo Timberman. Delta, despite maybe not making the postseason, want to wrap up a pretty positive season overall with the win at home, and you know that's going to be a point of emphasis against a pretty strong team in the Nanaimo Timberman. Next one up on the docket is the Langley Thunder taking on the Burnaby Lakers at home, and we can take a look at some of those highlights right now, shall we? Going down to the Langley Event Center, sneakily one of the more competitive regular season series of the season, and this would be the third and final matchup of the season. After trailing 3-0, Marcellus Dente got Burnaby going a little bit. Langley, though, would very much so still be in the driver's seat. Bailey Vanachuk. How does a first period hat trick sound? Not too bad. How does a Max Goaler shorthanded laying down goal sound? Guys, I think maybe we should revisit our defensive schemes. Doesn't seem to be working all that much. Little insult to injury to close things out. Arjun Gill, he giveth and he taketh away. 12-6 would be your final score in favor of the Langley Thunder at home. These are 2 teams, neither of them really did all that much at the trade deadline. Langley did get a little bit of work done, trading Temeka Gottfriedson over to the Rocky Mountain Junior Lacrosse League. You can see there he goes over to the Edmonton Miners. The playoffs are just about to get underway over there in the Rocky Mountain League as well. Just to be completely honest, I'm having a difficult time breaking down the Burnaby games at this point of the season. And it's mostly just because the lack of consistency in terms of who they have in and out of their lineup on a pretty consistent basis. Like, that's the consistent thing, is that they have new faces coming into their lineup virtually on every game. And when you've had a season like the Burnaby Lakers have, it's kind of hard to judge at this point. They're really just trying to get through these last couple games of the year and look forward to the future. They do have new ownership in place. They lost their general manager midway through the season. And like I said, they just have new faces coming out of the lineup on a pretty regular basis. They're just trying to get through to the end of it. So it's pretty hard to judge a team that can't really build chemistry on a week-to-week basis, because there's not really people to build chemistry with for the most part in terms of the player personnel. So, I mean, when it's all said and done, Langley kind of did what they were supposed to do in this game. They're the team that is supposed to win this game. They went out and they got the job done. Bailey Vanachuk, Cody Todd, and Max Goller. We saw that Max Goller goal where he just laid down on the ground. But those 3 combined for 16 points in this game. And they were actually doing this without Malowski in the lineup. He did not play post-trade deadline in this one for the Langley Thunder. Final score in that game, I think we already mentioned it at the end of the highlights. It goes in favor of the Langley Thunder. We can take a look now at our next game on the schedule, and it went down Friday night in Port Coquitlam. It was the New Westminster Salmon Bellies taking on the Poco Saints. Giddy up for a weird one. The Saints playing in their last home game of the season. Decent crowd. They just want to put together a good show here. It started well. Carter Smith made it 1-0 early. Later, Parker Malott makes it 5-0. This next goal, though, was the trick shot turning point of the game. Final minute of the first period, Carter Beecroft from his wrong side, likely one that Aaron Price would want back. Now second period, New West trailing by 1. Beecroft again ties the game for the first time since it was scoreless. Those would be his first 2 career Junior A goals. Poco did get the lead back. Momentum is a funny thing, though. You just knew the Bellies would find a way, and they did. Leading to this, Short-handed Lincoln Twomley absolutely posterizes a couple of Saints defenders, and then the delayed celebration. Right in front of the Poco bench, New West climbs all the way back to make this an 11-8 come from behind victory. They were out shooting Poco for most of that game as well, despite while they were down. Look at the celebration from Boris Maximenko as well. He did not start that game. Jackson Hastings was the goaltender that started things off, but Boris Maximenko came in about midway through the first period, and New West didn't really look back from that point forward. Let's take a look at some of New West's dealings at the trade deadline. They were a team that decided to sell, and you look at some of those names. We already mentioned Ren Glanville, Aiden McDonald, Kyler Francis, all going over to Coquitlam. Levi Tui, who they had for what felt like about 5 minutes, and then he got dealt over to the Orangeville Northmen. Seth DeLaron also joins him over in Ontario, and then Damien Seong was actually sent over to the Poco Saints. He was part of the original Levi Tui trade that sent him over to New West before he was then sent over to Orangeville. But Damien Seong is now a member of the Poco Saints. He got into that game actually against his former club. And we can take a look now over at some of Port Coquitlam's departures as well. That's another team that we've talked about in the weeks leading up to this one. A lot of Nanaimo Timberman going on there. Joel Mullen, Ashton Brown, Lincoln Wall, Josh Mills is another one that we broke down already. He goes over to the Toronto Beaches, and Andrew Cowan is now a member of the Edmonton Miners in his final year of junior lacrosse. He's going to, of course, try to be a part of a Miners team that will look to push for a Minto spot. New West does still have a shot at the playoffs, and this win keeps their hopes alive. It's really a battle right now between Langley, New West, and Delta, with Langley having that 4th spot in their hand currently, and also a game at hand, so it favors them a little bit. But New West does have a little bit of that playoff hope still alive, I guess you could say. That being said, similar to the Delta Islanders, I don't really think a playoff spot is necessarily their number one priority. I think they're mostly just looking for the process and making sure they're getting a look at some of the guys that may be vying for jobs next year and the following year as well. Remember, this is a team that plans to contend for a Minto in 2027 when it's back hosted in BC once again. It really is a similar mindset. Looking over to the Poco side of things, a kind of a similar mindset in that you're not really necessarily looking for the result. You're looking for the process for some of these young guys. And somebody that I've mentioned before on the breakdown, and I'm going to continue to mention throughout his junior career, I think, is Woodson McRae. He's been a call-up for the Poco Saints. He's a young defender coming up from the junior B team. He's played a few games now for the junior A squad, and I've been so impressed by him. He just looks completely fearless out of the defensive gate. There's no matchup that he has any fear going towards. He's getting he's earning a lot of tough matchups as well from the coaching staff. I think he's being rewarded in that sense. And he scored a goal as well a couple of weeks ago for Poco. So somebody to keep your eye on, I think, for the future coming years in junior lacrosse out here in BC, but especially for the Poco Saints. I think he's going to be a name you want to keep your eye on here going forward. We can move on to the next one now on the schedule, and that was the Coquitlam AdNax taking on the Langley Thunder. That went down here at home, and this is another game that we got some highlights loaded up for, so we can throw to those now. Early in the season, I think a lot of people would have pointed to this game and labeled it as Cody Malowski's first game back with the AdNax since hoisting Lord Minto. That would not be the case. A more legitimate storyline, though, to this was Jackson Dillon's continued quest for 100 career junior A goals. He was just one away after he scored in the first period, leading to this, the century mark. He eclipses 100 career junior A goals. Incredible stuff for him. All of them going down in a Coquitlam AdNax jersey. Mason Eastgate scored for the Thunder to keep this one at a close 9-1. Within striking distance, folks. Goes airborne. The score bug at the end of this game, as you'll see in a moment, read 0-0. I promise you, that was not the score. Ren Glanville and Oscar Lucas getting the scoring. There it is, 0-0. It was not 0-0. It was more so a lot to a little in favor of the Coquitlam AdNax at home. Ren Glanville had a huge game in his AdNax debut. 4 goals on the evening. Not too bad for a debut. And that was still without, there's the final score, 13-3. And that was still without the likes of Aiden McDonald, who was another one of those guys coming over from New West, another key right-handed offensive threat, more so a facilitator than a goal scorer. Ren Glanville, of those two, is more so the goal scorer, and you saw that on display in that game. Game was never really close. I mean, as you kind of saw through the score right there, it was 9-0 before Langley got onto the scoreboard. Mason Eastgate going high to the sky and tucking it past Jack Kask. The big storyline for this game, and I believe we have a graphic for this as well, was Jackson Dillon, as mentioned, scoring his 100th career Junior A goal. I've said this earlier this season on the show about how I have a little bit of trust issues when it comes to stats in lacrosse in general, whether it's the NLL or BC Junior A League, regardless of where it is. I am trying to do some work right now to try to figure out the overall goal scorers throughout the history of the BC Junior A League. It does take a little bit of time here, and I'm kind of doing it manually. So I can't tell you where in that category Jackson Dillon falls, but he's going to be up there in some pretty good class with some other goal scorers that have come throughout this league. So Jackson Dillon puts himself in that century mark, and that is a pretty elite class to be in. The Coquitlam AdNax would be done for the rest of last week, so we can take a look at some of their upcoming games for this week. They're going to get back underway tonight against the New Westminster Salmon Bellies. This game will already have been concluded by the time this show comes out. So the result of this one will already be in the rearview mirror. Again, that's against the New Westminster Salmon Bellies in New West. They will have another game on Friday. It'll be their last home game of the regular season, and it'll be a rematch against the New Westminster Salmon Bellies. Again, New West playoffs hopes slightly still alive here. Again, not entirely their top priority, but we'll see what a couple of matchups against some rivals in Coquitlam will do for them. And that would be Langley's last game from last week as well, so we can look ahead at their upcoming schedule as well. Their last two games of the year. First one will be at home on Thursday evening against the Poco Saints, and their last one of the year will be a road game against the Victoria Shamrocks on Saturday. Moving on to the next one on the list, it was the Nanaimo Timberman taking on the Poco Saints, and a very familiar game in a way, and we can throw to the graphic right now as the acquisitions, we've already talked about some of them, but going to the Nanaimo Timberman, and you'll see right here as to why it is very much so a familiar game. 4 players in total go to the Timberman at the deadline, or just before the deadline as well. From the Poco Saints, that being Joel Mullen, Lincoln Wall, Ashton Brown, and Luke Neary earlier in the season. There were a couple of late additions as well coming over from the Delta Islanders, that being Turner Anderson and Jared Masnick. Jared Masnick, the only of those two that would get into the lineup for this game at home in Nanaimo against Poco. Of course, as well, Ashton Brown gets the start in this game. I think you probably could have seen that coming. The coaching staff wanting to give him a look at his former team, maybe some bragging rights as well, just going forward. But much like some previous games that we've talked about, and maybe a little foreshadowing, another one that we may talk about here going forward. This one was never really close, and again, Poco not overly concerned about the result. Again, just looking for the process here. Nanaimo goes up 6-1 by the end of the first period. It's 11-3 by the end of the second period. You kind of get the picture from that point forward. Joel Mullen as well, pretty incredible story. He gets his first goal of the year. Of course it would go against his former team. You probably could have predicted that one as well. Lincoln Wall would also finish the game with an assist. All 3 of those former Saints ended up contributing. I guess I'm not including Luke Neary in that category, but all 3 of the former Saints that came over at the deadline end up contributing for the Timbermen in that game in their goaltender, defender, and forward. So pretty special in that regard. Ashton Brown was fantastic in goal in this game, put up an .868 save percentage, and he got an assist on Jordan Vincent's transition goal, so even more bragging rights for the former Port Coquitlam goaltender. Poco started Aaron Price in goal. He's been mostly the starter since the departure of Ashton Brown. He got pulled early in the second period, and Mason Weir came in Despite the loss, Mason Weir did play really strong in this game. He ends up stopping 30 of 32 in some pretty limited minutes. Saints were also without Daniel Mahoney for most of this game. He got ejected along with Wyatt Pickup after they mixed it up a little bit in the first period. So Poco already without some of their usual lineup from the trade deadline. They're down one more for the vast majority of this game in Daniel Mahoney after getting into a bit of a scrap there. We can take a look now at Poco's next game. Throw that up on the screen here. They'll be on the road to take on the Langley Thunder at the Langley Event Center. And that'll do it for the Poco Saints season. It'll be wrapped up after that game and after a bit of a lighter-ish week last week. We can throw to the next one now on the schedule, and this one went down between the Victoria Shamrocks and the New Westminster Salmon Bellies. Let's take a look at those highlights here, shall we? Brought to you by the fine folks at Trick Shot. Final meeting of the season between these historic franchises. Recently, I praised Ryan Lowe for his interior work. Look at that outside shot. Off the post and in, perfectly placed, that would open the scoring. Later in the first, trailing by 1, Ethan Kessler with the howitzer. He knows that was a good one. You can see a little flick of the wrist. Moving over to the second period, I guess New West decided the best way to slow down Lowe would be to just pin him to the ground. Take him out of the play. You almost can't see him on the floor. That green floor with the green jerseys. Lincoln Twomley would make it interesting with his 25th, but no cigar. Shamrocks would win this game 11-10 and win the regular season series 2-1 in that regard. Speaking of bragging rights, not too bad. Similar to the Nanaimo Timberman, I guess I haven't mentioned this yet, but I will talk about this a little bit later on. Victoria, they need to win out the rest of their season if they want to lock in the second overall spot and get home floor advantage. It's looking very likely that the first round playoff matchup between 2 and 3 will be Victoria versus Nanaimo. Which team gets home floor advantage is still to be decided. But if Victoria does want that spot, they do need to win out this season. The same thing does apply for the Nanaimo Timberman. Again, I'll talk about that in a little bit. New West has to have been feeling good coming into this game after a big come-from-behind victory the night before against Poco. We already showed that one. Same as I mentioned, I mean, I'm going to continue to hammer this point for some of these teams that ended up selling that are right on the bubble of a playoff spot. It's about the process right now for New West, and they're certainly getting that from a lot of guys. I mean, you look at Lincoln Twomley, Cooper Board is a guy that I've mentioned before, and they have one of the best up-and-coming goaltenders in Boris Maximenko. I have talked, a lot about milestones this year. I'm going over to the Victoria side of things here for a sec. Jet Klassen has led the league in scoring, in goals specifically, almost the entire year. He's been at the top of that list. He's now up to 39 goals on the year. I believe he's just a third-year junior right now. Somebody fact check me on that, please. This is a question that I guess I want to put out to the viewers or just something to keep our eyes on here. Remember that Victoria has 2 games left this season. I want to know how realistic it could be for Jet Klassen to get to the 50-goal mark. He's at 39 right now, which puts him 11 away with 2 games left on the year. They play Nanaimo tonight at the time of recording. So, tonight's game, by the time this comes out, we may have a much clearer answer. So they play Nanaimo on Tuesday night, and then they play Langley on Saturday. He's scored 5 goals once this year. He's scored 4 goals in a game 3 times, and he's had 3 hat tricks so far this year. I guess that's just to provide a little bit of backstory. I would say it's maybe a little bit more on the side of unlikely, but just something to keep an eye on. 11 goals away from Jet Klassen hitting the 50-goal mark in a season for the first time in his young junior career. And, I mean, remember, looking back to the New West side of things, Lucas Nielsen is a guy that scored 50 last year, ends up getting drafted by the Bandits in the NLL. Not to say that 50 goals is what gets you there to the NLL, and Jet Klassen's still very early in his junior career, but 50 goals in a year is nothing to scoff at, and I think that's something that teams in the future will certainly keep their eye on when it comes to doing some preparation for upcoming draft years. That would be it for Victoria's games from last week. So we can take a look at their upcoming schedule. We already kind of previewed it a little bit. Tonight at the time of recording, so Tuesday night, they will be at home taking on the Nanaimo Timberman. That is a very important game in terms of playoff implications. And then they will close out their regular season on Saturday at home against the Langley Thunder. Where will Jet Klassen's goal totals be by that point? That was also it for the week of the New Westminster Salmon Bellies. I mean, same thing as we just talked about. They're going to get underway tonight. So this will be done at the time of, or by the time this comes out, they will take on the Coquitlam AdNax, and then they will wrap up their regular season on the road here in a rematch against the Coquitlam AdNax at the Palace. We'll see what the standings look like at that point. Last game of the week, and it was between the Burnaby Lakers and the Nanaimo Timbermen. We can throw to those highlights now. Rather, let's just marvel over some of these Jared Masnick highlights. The reaction from Lincoln Wall on this goal is my favorite. You can see him just look to the heavens there. Pretty unbelievable stuff. It would be 10-0 before Kyan Syed finally got the Lakers on the board. But hang on for a second. 2 straight goals for the Lakers here. There's no chance we're teasing a comeback, are we? No. No, we're not. There would be no comeback. There would almost be a goalie goal, though. Ashton Brown within 4 inches. So close, Ashton. Joel Mullen would put it home. Then some rough stuff. There's something about Bill Copeland Arena and fights this year. Luke Neary versus Nigel Nowak. Watch Ty Yanko on the bench at the end of this fight. You can see his reaction as to it being a pretty clear indication that Luke Neary got the shot off. There's Yanko standing up. Yep, he just can't look. That was a clean and heavy right by Neary. 18-4 would be the final for the Timbermen on the road. Yeah, that ferry ride home likely feels a lot smoother with a game like that under their belt. And yeah, Luke Neary with the fisting. I mean, we saw the Josh Mills fight earlier in the season against Rocco Sandini from almost that exact same location. Now Luke Neary mixes it up with Nigel Nowak. Yeah, something about that floor. I don't know, man. Something about that floor. Again, I mean, the same thing that I said earlier with the Lakers. I'm having a hard time really dissecting this game. Again, just this game alone, it was almost an entirely different looking lineup than their previous game that we talked about in this show. So, you know, like I almost feel bad like dissecting this game from their point of view, just with the circumstances they've been under. Again, new ownership, no GM halfway through the year. You kind of get the picture. There were 5 different Timberman runners that ended up with 2 or more goals in this game. 3 of them had hat tricks. Lincoln Wall and Jared Masnick, each of them had 3. Tyson Fontella finishes the game with 4 goals. Not too bad. One thing that was a little curious that went down in that game, however, Keegan Okino started the game. He pulled himself after playing just a little over 9.5 minutes. I didn't see any contact. Didn't look like there was any injury. He didn't go off the floor limping or anything. And then he stayed on the bench running a gate. He didn't even go down the tunnel. He stayed kind of at the tunnel the whole time. Ashton Brown came in to replace him and played good the rest of the way through. It's just something that I kind of clocked a little bit there was Keegan Okino apparently or seemingly took himself out of the game and did not return but stayed on the bench. Nanaimo's power play, like they look like they're just clicking at the right time. They go 3 for 5 on the man advantage in that game. Masnick, Fontella, Pilkington, Bowman, and Wall. That is seemingly their top unit power play. Not bad, I would say. The Lakers have just 1 game left on their regular season before they can pull the curtain across the stage on this season, as I'm sure they would like to do sooner than later. And we can take a look at that last game of the regular season for them. It will go down at home against the Delta Islanders. You can catch that on Junior Lakers TV if you feel so inclined. Yours truly will be on the call. Come hang out for the final Burnaby Lakers game of the season. Nanaimo's last games of the year, and this is a very interesting tidbit. Remember I mentioned Victoria, how they have to win out to be able to lock in second place. Nanaimo also in that category. Currently, they have 2 games left on their schedule, but remember, they did have a game postponed against the Langley Thunder earlier in the season that they still have to make up. So technically, Nanaimo does have 3 games left. Currently, as what's put up on the schedule, they'll play tonight at the time of recording, Tuesday night against the Victoria Shamrocks. Again, a very interesting game in terms of playoff implications. And then they will sort of close things out depending on the rescheduling of that postponed game, but they'll be underway on the road on Saturday afternoon against the Delta Islanders. And we can take a look now at the moment up-to-date standings in the BC Junior A Lacrosse League, and you can take a look here. The top 4 teams are more or less locked in. Coquitlam, they have clinched first overall, currently with a 13-2 record. Victoria and Nanaimo sit at 2 and 3. Again, remember, Nanaimo does have that postponed game to make up. That's why there might be a little bit of confusion with their remaining games. And then that 4th and final spot is almost deadlocked here between Langley, Delta, and New West, but Langley has 1 game at hand that favors them. What a story that would be. They go from not winning a game for all those days in a row to rebounding the next year and putting themselves potentially into a playoff position, at the very least in a good spot to be able to compete in the first round. And I don't think they're anticipating doing a ton of damage or going on a deep playoff or minto run here, but the experience for some of those young guys on that team that are going to be on this squad for the foreseeable future, it is priceless, that experience. Want to go down some of the clinching scenarios here that we can look at for these teams. So as mentioned, Coquitlam has locked in first overall. They have 2 games left this week to close out their regular season, but they have currently clinched the first spot. Victoria has not clinched a specific seed yet. We know that they cannot finish first. They will be locked in at either second or third. With 2 wins this week, the Victoria Shamrocks will lock in the 2nd overall seed. Nanaimo cannot finish lower than 3rd. Again, they're jockeying with Victoria for 2nd or 3rd. They can clinch the number 2 spot with 3 wins this week, and this is the important part. They need 2 Victoria losses because the Shamrocks do have the tiebreaker over the Nanaimo Timberman at the moment. And then, as we've talked about, New West, Delta, and Langley all jockeying for that 4th overall spot, with Langley having the game at hand that favors them. Man, we have finally made it almost to playoff time. I can't believe we're here. It feels like it was just yesterday that we were talking about season previews and what teams did in the offseason. Still some work to do here for at least 4 of these teams. We'll see how this playoff picture shapes up here. But yeah, we are finally close towards the playoff picture, and I cannot wait. It's looking like Coquitlam is going to face off. We're not looking like, I should say. It's locked in that Coquitlam is going to be facing up against either New West, Delta, or Langley, and then we're going to get that Island Classic matchup against Victoria and Nanaimo. Which team will have home floor advantage? That is still left to be told. We will see. That's going to do it, folks, for another episode of The Breakdown. Again, we thank you so much for joining us. You can catch all of the previous episodes, if you've missed any of them, on trickshotlive.com or on our YouTube channel. We hope to see you there in the future. And as always, we'll see you next time.